The vaulted lecture hall of the Galactic Academy of Xenobiology vibrated faintly with the low hum of containment fields. Rows of tiered seats stretched upward, filled with young males from half a dozen species, their scaled, feathered, and chitinous forms pressed tight against the backrests as though distance alone could keep them safe. The air was tense, heavy with the acrid tang of ozone leaking from the professor's device. Every student felt it, the danger that lurked within. Professor Jorvek strode through the center aisle, tall and lean, scales burnished bronze beneath his robe. His reptilian eyes flicked from student to student, pleased by their apprehension. He dragged behind him a wheeled containment pod that glowed with the sickly blue of reinforced energy barriers. Inside, a shadow shifted, enormous, a bulk that pressed against the walls of its prison with predatory patience. Today, Jorvek announced, voice like gravel poured into steel, you will witness what true evolution on a death world produces. Few beings survive long enough to even glimpse such a creature and leave with their minds intact. Consider yourselves privileged. The shadow inside the field shifted again, and the brief flash of pale light revealed claws like hooked scythes. Several students hissed or clicked in fear. A winged cadet near the aisle folded his appendages tightly around himself, muttering in his own tongue about nightmares given form. Only one figure among them failed to recoil. Ethan Hale sat with one boot casually hooked over the rung of his chair, leaning forward as though he had just been promised a good show. His dark hair fell untidily over his brow, and his expression was not fear but curiosity, eyes intent on the shifting form in the cage. Jorvek noticed. His eyes narrowed. Human, you seem unconcerned. Ethan shrugged, his voice light. It's just an animal, isn't it? Dangerous, sure, but still an animal. A hiss rose from the chamber as students exchanged shocked words. The audacity of dismissing what haunted their histories was unthinkable. Jorvek ignored the chatter and pressed a control on his wrist. The containment pod opened with a hiss of vented gas, and the field contracted until the beast stood revealed. It emerged with deliberate slowness, its bulk dwarfing the professor. Armor-plated hide rippled like living iron. Fangs gleamed in the hall's sterile light, and eyes burned with a feral intelligence that seemed to pierce every soul present. Its breath came in low rumbles, and the floor vibrated faintly beneath its steps. The first row of students scrambled back, their fear nearly tangible. Some emitted warning pheromones, others screeched or chattered in panic. Jorvek raised a clawed hand for silence. This is a predator born of a world whose surface devours the unprepared. It has felled hunting parties twice your number. Even in restraint, it is death. The beast snarled, and the sound carried like rolling thunder. Students recoiled further. But Ethan's lips quirked upward, as if he were suppressing a laugh. "You got to be kidding me," he murmured. "It's just a big cat." The words spread in a hissed chorus. Cat. No translation unit could soften the madness of equating this nightmare with something domestic. Jorvek snapped his head toward Ethan, aghast. "Explain yourself." Ethan rose, brushing dust from his sleeve, and walked down the aisle. His steps were unhurried, unafraid. "On Earth, we've got predators too. Some of them looked like this once. Fangs, claws, the whole package. But you learn to read body language, show confidence, and they don't see you as prey. You'll stop where you stand." Jorvek's command cracked through the chamber, but Ethan ignored it. The beast lowered its head, muscles rippling beneath its plated skin, and let out a sound halfway between growl and roar. Students shrieked. One lizard-like cadet dropped to the floor and covered his eyes. Jorvek's hand hovered over the fail-safe control for the restraint harness. Ethan slowed his steps, crouching low, meeting the creature's molten gaze. "Easy, big guy," he said softly. "Nobody here wants a fight. You're just confused, aren't you?" The words meant nothing to alien ears, but his tone carried something primal, steady, coaxing. The beast's growl faltered, replaced by a low chuff of breath. Its claws, poised to strike, flexed once against the floor, but did not advance. Ethan extended a hand, palm out, fingers relaxed. He tilted his head slightly, a gesture of calm and trust. Every alien in the hall seemed to hold their breath. Then, impossibly, Ethan reached forward and scratched behind one of the beast's ears. The hall erupted in gasps and screeches. Several cadets bolted for the exits. Jorvek stood frozen, torn between activating the failsafe and disbelief. The beast, the terror of a dozen colonies, closed its eyes halfway and exhaled a rumbling sound that vibrated through the floor. Not a growl, but something softer, gentler. A purr. Ethan grinned, scratching a little harder. There we go. It was a good kitty. The sight was unbearable to the alien students. One clutched at his mandibles, muttering prayers to ancestors. Another simply fainted where he stood. Jorvek's claws trembled against his control panel. Ethan looked back over his shoulder, still crouched beside the massive predator. His voice was calm, as if the answer to the galaxy's fears were obvious. You all see a monster. But where I come from, we call this making friends. The beast leaned into his touch, a sound like contentment echoing through the hall, and for a moment the silence was absolute. The lecture, the fear, the warnings, all of it dissolved into one incomprehensible image, a human stroking death itself, and death purring under his hand. And none of them knew what to fear more, the beast or the man who called it kitty. Two in full prose, / 1,200 words. *** next. The lecture hall remained stunned long after the beast's purr faded into silence. Alien students clung to their seats, antennae and crests trembling, unable to reconcile what their eyes had witnessed. Jorvek's throat clicked in disbelief as he stared at the human crouched beside the predator. His training, his decades of study, screamed that this was impossible. The beast should have torn Ethan apart in a spray of gore. Yet here it was, leaning into the man's hand like a pet. Ethan rose slowly, brushing his palms against his trousers, as if he had merely finished greeting a neighbor's dog. The beast lumbered a step after him, rumbling low, not in menace but in expectation, as though it awaited further attention. The young human smirked, giving it another absent-minded scratch, and the noise resumed, a vibrating purr that shook the air. "This is madness," hissed a scaled student, his voice edged with terror. "It is deception. The beast is luring him in, waiting for the moment his guard falters." Others muttered their agreement, though none dared move closer. They had grown up on stories of these predators, of worlds scoured and hunting expeditions that returned in pieces, if at all. To see one tamed, or appearing tamed, was an affront to everything they knew. Ethan looked around at their wide eyes and nervous limbs. "You're all scared stiff, and I get it. But where I come from, this isn't so unusual. On Earth we've got predators too, wolves, lions, tigers. We learned a long time ago that fear doesn't keep you safe. Understanding does." "Understanding?" Jorvek snapped, voice cutting like a blade. "That creature is engineered by brutality itself. My people lost colonies to its kind. You speak of understanding as though it can erase slaughter." The human's expression softened, but he didn't back down. "Maybe the slaughter happened because nobody tried something else. You treat everything dangerous like an enemy. On Earth, some of our closest companions used to be nightmares too. Wolves became dogs, wild cats became house cats. We didn't just kill what scared us. We learned to work with it." The alien cadets exchanged horrified looks. To them, the notion that such monsters could ever be anything but engines of death was absurd. Jorvek felt his tail lash in agitation, yet his eyes never left the predator's relaxed posture beside the human. "You claim," Jorvek said slowly, "that this beast can be tamed as your people tamed wolves? That you, fragile, short-lived human, believe yourself capable of reshaping instinct forged in a crucible of violence?" Ethan met his stare, calm and unwavering. "Not reshaping, respecting. You look at him and see a weapon. I look at him and see a creature trying to survive, just like us. The difference is whether we meet him with fear or with trust." Jorvek considered activating the restraints again, but something in the human's tone gave him pause. He felt a grudging curiosity gnawing at the edges of his certainty. Could this be more than a trick of coincidence? He exhaled sharply through his nostrils and pressed a command. The harness lights dimmed, releasing another set of locks. The hall filled with gasps. The beast stepped forward, unbound, free to strike. Its claws carved shallow grooves in the smooth flooring as it stalked across the platform. A feathered student shrieked and bolted for the exit. Others shrank behind their seats. The predator's head swung toward a nearby cadet, lips curling back to reveal glistening fangs. The student froze, pupils dilating in terror. Muscles coiled, the beast prepared to lunge. "Hey!" Ethan barked. His voice cracked through the tension like a whip. He strode forward, unflinching, placing himself between the beast and its target. His posture radiated confidence, not aggression, shoulders squared, gaze steady. The creature hesitated, nostrils flaring. Ethan raised a hand and spoke in that same calm tone as before, the cadence soothing even if the words were meaningless to alien ears. The beast's growl lowered, then faded. Its massive head dipped, pressing against his palm, and another deep rumble of contentment filled the air. The endangered cadet collapsed in relief, trembling so violently his chitin plates rattled. The rest of the hall sat in stunned silence. Ethan scratched along the creature's jawline, smiling faintly. "See? He doesn't want to hurt anyone. He just doesn't know what you expect from him." Jorvek's claws tightened against his datapad. His mind warred with itself, knowledge screaming that predators could not be reasoned with, while his eyes bore witness to a human doing exactly that. He could feel his authority slipping in the face of this quiet defiance. "You endanger everyone," he said, though the words rang hollow even to his own ears. "One misstep and you unleash catastrophe. Or one misstep," Ethan countered, "and you miss the chance to turn an enemy into a friend." He gave the beast a final pat, then looked back at the professor. "I don't see a monster. I see potential." The hall was silent, but for the slow, rhythmic breathing of the predator beside him. Jorvek realized that the eyes of every student were on him, waiting to see whether he would dismiss this spectacle as madness or acknowledge what had unfolded before them. His throat worked, but the words that came out were quieter than he intended. "That thing," he said, gesturing at the beast, "has slaughtered my people. Entire settlements lost. To suggest it can be anything but death is an insult to their memory." Ethan did not flinch at the weight of grief in his tone. His voice was steady, almost gentle. "I don't dismiss what happened, but maybe the truth is simpler than you think. Maybe they never had anyone who thought to scratch its head instead of raise a blade." The sheer audacity of the statement hung in the air, impossible to refute, yet equally impossible to accept. The students shifted uneasily, their gazes darting between the professor and the human. The beast sat at Ethan's side, rumbling like an oversized engine, unthreatening for the first time in their lives. Jorvek clenched his jaw, unsettled to his core. Logic insisted this was a temporary fluke, a fragile illusion that could shatter in blood at any second. Yet the evidence before him whispered of something more, something only humans seemed to grasp. The lecture hall felt smaller now, claustrophobic with the weight of revelation. None dared speak further, and though the beast remained calm, everyone knew the true test had only begun. Section 3/1000 words. Next. News of the incident spread through the academy like wildfire. By the following cycle, whispers carried along every corridor. The human had tamed a Deathworld beast with nothing but his hands. Some called it sorcery, others insanity. Few believed it possible, yet all had seen the recordings. Ethan kneeling beside the predator, scratching its plated jaw as though it were a harmless companion. The footage reached further than the academy, and with it came attention far less forgiving. Summoned to the central chamber, Ethan stood before Jorvek and a panel of security officials. The beast crouched at his side, its amber eyes fixed on anyone who moved too quickly. Guards lined the perimeter with heavy rifles, muzzles trembling each time the predator exhaled. The creature is classified as a catastrophic threat, declared the security commander, a broad-shouldered insectoid with mandibles clicking in measured rhythm. Its termination has been authorized. The fact it remains alive within Academy grounds is already a breach of protocol. Ethan folded his arms. You don't see what's in front of you. He's not trying to hurt anyone. He just needed someone to give him a chance. You gamble with lives, the commander snapped. This animal has slaughtered colonies. Do you presume to know better than an entire council of experts? Ethan's gaze remained steady. Maybe I do, because while you study them like weapons, I've lived my whole life alongside predators just as dangerous. You're terrified because you've never tried trust. Fear isn't wisdom, it's surrender. The chamber buzzed with uneasy murmurs. Jorvek's jaw tightened, yet something in his eyes betrayed hesitation. He remembered too vividly the way the beast had lowered itself beneath the human's hand. He wanted to dismiss it as trickery, but the image gnawed at him, demanding explanation. The commander gestured sharply. Activate termination sequence. Panels along the walls opened, revealing automated cannons. Energy cores flared, casting the hall in crimson light. The beast rose, hackles rippling, a low growl vibrating the floor. The students watching from the balconies recoiled, fear sharpening into panic. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between the cannons and the creature. No, he said firmly. If you fire on him, you'll have to go through me. The commander bristled. You would die for a monster? Ethan's reply came without pause. I'd die before I let you kill friend. The predator snarled, sensing the tension, claws gouging deep furrows into the metal floor. Soldiers raised their rifles, every finger tightening on triggers. The situation teetered on the brink of massacre. Ethan dropped to one knee, pressing his forehead gently against the beast's massive snout. He whispered, voice low and steady. None of the aliens understood the words, yet the cadence carried a strange authority, a rhythm born of instinct and sincerity. Slowly, impossibly, the beast's growl faded. Its muscles slackened, and it sank to the floor, breathing deep, no longer poised to strike. Gasps rippled across the chamber. The cannons remained primed, humming with lethal energy, yet the target lay calm and docile beneath the human's touch. Ethan lifted his head, eyes locking onto the commander's. Do you see now? He asked, his tone quiet but unshakable. You point weapons at him, and he becomes the monster. You show him trust, and he becomes something else. The choice is yours. The commander's mandibles clicked furiously. You are blinded by sentiment. One mistake, and this academy is ash. Or one act of fear, Ethan shot back, and you destroy the proof that monsters don't have to stay monsters. The silence that followed was heavy, taut as a drawn bowstring. Jorvek's hands curled at his sides. Every calculation told him the human was reckless, but his instincts whispered another truth. In all his years of study, he had never seen any being command such obedience through nothing but presence. Finally, with a guttural growl, the commander signaled the cannons to power down. The crimson glow faded, leaving the chamber in tense shadow. This decision is temporary, the commander warned. One incident, one hint of aggression, and the creature is executed. Do you understand, human? Ethan gave a single nod, his hand never leaving the beast's head. Then you'd better hope you don't push him into a corner. The session dispersed with reluctant murmurs, but the story spread further still. Cadets whispered that the human had stared down death itself, and won not with violence, but with faith. Some called him insane, others dangerous. Yet a few, too few for comfort, looked on him with awe. Jorvek lingered after the others had gone, his golden eyes fixed on Ethan. You believe you can carry this burden? He asked quietly. Ethan scratched the beast behind the ear, earning another rumbling purr. I don't just believe it. I know it. Because he trusts me now. That's more than you've ever given him. Jorvek's tail lashed once. Betraying turmoil, he refused a voice. He turned away, but the unease remained. The human had shown something undeniable, and though he wanted to dismiss it, he could not escape the question echoing in his mind. What if humanity's true power was not its strength, but its capacity to love without fear. The chamber emptied, leaving only Ethan and the beast sitting together in silence. Beyond the sealed doors, the galaxy muttered about containment, about execution, about laws written in blood. Inside, a man and a monster leaned on one another, their quiet bond defying everything reason demanded. And somewhere in the depths of the academy, decisions were already forming that would test whether such a bond could survive the galaxy's fear. Words, asterisk asterisk, as the final resolution. The academy trembled with tension that no alarms could mask. Rumors of the tribunal's ruling coursed through its halls like a current, carrying dread and anticipation in equal measure. Students gathered in shadowed alcoves, their voices hushed, all speaking of the same thing: the human, the beast, and the decision that would determine both their fates. Some prayed for the predator's swift execution. Others, more quietly, confessed curiosity about the strange bond they had witnessed. In the central chamber, the tribunal assembled once more. High above, banners of the academy hung rigid, their symbols of knowledge and restraint now seeming almost ironic. The chamber seats were filled not only with cadets, but also with delegates from the Planetary Council, their presence a stark reminder of how far the scandal had spread. At the heart of the room stood Ethan, the beast crouched loyally at his side, its amber eyes fixed on the gathering as if daring anyone to approach. The security commander raised his voice, sharp and commanding. This creature remains a clear and present danger to the Academy and to all civilized systems. The human's reckless behavior does not erase the blood already spilled by its kind. Law demands its termination. Ethan met his words without flinching. You talk about law, but what about truth? You saw what happened. He had every chance to attack me, to kill me, and he didn't. He chose trust because I gave it first. His tone carried conviction, but beneath it lay something deeper, the weight of responsibility, not bravado. Jorvek, seated among the tribunal, felt the eyes of the entire chamber turn toward him. He had remained silent through much of the proceedings, his thoughts a storm he could not quiet. He remembered the fear etched into his people's history, the records of slaughter, but he also remembered the sight of the predator lowering itself under a human's hand. He was a man of science, and science demanded acknowledgement of what stood before him, proof that instinct could bend beneath something stronger. The commander signaled, and soldiers marched forward, rifles leveled at the beast. Energy cores hummed, their glow painting the chamber in cold light. The predator's rumble shook the floor, claws scraping steel. Tension rose like a storm about to break. Ethan spread his arms, placing himself squarely between the rifles and his companion. If you fire, you'll hit me first. Maybe that's what it takes to make you understand. This isn't a monster. He's proof that you're wrong about what can and can't be trusted. The chamber erupted into chaos, cadets shouting, counselors demanding order. The soldiers hesitated, their weapons wavering under the weight of what they were about to do. The beast growled louder, yet remained seated, waiting for its human's cue. Jorvek rose slowly, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the chamber floor. His voice cut through the noise, deep and commanding. Enough. Silence fell, every gaze fixed on him. He looked first to the commander, then to the human, then finally to the beast itself. Our laws speak of containment, of destruction, of fear. But our oldest laws, older than the Council, speak of bonds. Where true mutual recognition exists between species, it cannot be broken by decree. To sever such a bond is to deny what is most sacred to sentient life. The commander bristled, mandibles snapping. You would risk countless lives on sentiment? Jorvek's golden eyes burned. No, I risk them on evidence. The human has done what none of us believe possible. He has bridged the unbridgeable. We can choose to destroy that proof, or we can learn from it. The chamber swelled with uneasy murmurs. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others leaned forward with dawning awe. Ethan remained still, though his hand rested on the beast's neck, fingers buried in thick fur as though grounding himself in the moment. The commander raised a trembling claw, then let it fall, rage written in every motion. If this ends in blood, it will be on your hands, Professor. Then let them rest heavy, Jorvek replied, his tone carved from stone. The soldiers lowered their rifles. The hum of their weapons faded. A hush fell, heavier than before, but no longer charged with imminent violence. Ethan exhaled, the faintest of smiles tugging at his lips. He scratched the beast's jaw, and the predator, once the terror of a dozen systems, closed its eyes in quiet contentment. Around them, the cadets whispered. To their ears, it sounded less like madness now, more like revelation. They had seen strength in countless forms, but never this. A man unarmed, unarmored, staring down death and reshaping it with nothing but trust. Ethan looked up at Jorvek, voice low but resolute. You made the right choice. Not for me, for him. The professor studied him for a long moment. Perhaps, or perhaps I made it for all of us. The chamber slowly emptied, but the legend had already taken root. Word would spread across the stars, retold in disbelief and awe, of a human who stroked the head of a Deathworld beast and called it Kitty. Some would mock it as folly, others would fear his omen, but none would forget. Later, when the chamber was quiet and shadows stretched long, Jorvek stood alone by the viewport. The stars glimmered cold and distant, yet his thoughts burned bright. He had taught many lessons in his career, but this one had been delivered by a student, and it had shaken him more than any he had given. Perhaps humanity was not terrifying because of their strength, but because of the way they wielded something rarer, the audacity to love what should be unlovable. Behind him, Ethan's laughter echoed faintly as the beast nudged him for another scratch, the sound of its purr carrying through the corridor. It was absurd. It was impossible, and it was undeniably human.